Dad, are we supposed to be waiting for her? Grant Mercer looked toward the hotel lobby for the third time in less than a minute. Not waiting, he said. Just giving her a chance to finish. Sadie gave him the skeptical look only a 9-year-old could make feel like cross-examination. Outside, late October rain streaked the tall windows of Northline Hospitality's newest boutique hotel in downtown Portland. Inside, Grant's lighting design had transformed the renovated lobby into something warm. Amber light across walnut walls, soft pools of gold above the seating areas, brighter lines guiding guests toward the elevators without making the space feel commercial. Tonight was the preview. Grant had spent 5 months making sure every fixture did exactly what it was supposed to do. People were easier to misread. His babysitter had canceled that afternoon, so Sadie came with him wearing a forest green raincoat over her sweater and carrying a paperback she had already finished twice. Grant wore charcoal trousers, a pale blue shirt, and a dark wool jacket still damp at the shoulders. Across the lobby, Audrey Callahan stood with 3 investors. She looked polished in a tailored black suit beneath a camel-colored coat she had removed after arriving, her dark blonde hair tucked neatly behind one ear. She caught Grant's eye. For half a second, her expression softened. Then one of the investors spoke, and Audrey turned away. Grant told himself it meant nothing. He had become very good at that. Before we go further, how old are you? Where are you watching from? And have you ever waited for someone who never quite told you where you stood? 8 months earlier, Grant had met Audrey when Northline hired him to redesign the lighting for 2 properties. Somewhere between site inspections, late coffee runs, and conversations that continued long after everyone else left, professional familiarity had become something neither of them named. Audrey remembered how Sadie liked her hot chocolate. Grant knew Audrey hated elevators with mirrored walls. They had shared dinners that weren't officially dates and silences that felt too comfortable to be strictly business. But whenever Grant moved one step closer, Audrey found a reason to move half a step back. That evening, she had promised to walk through the finished installation with him. 40 minutes passed. Grant finally closed his portfolio. Come on, kiddo. Sadie looked toward Audrey. We're leaving. Yeah. At that moment, Audrey crossed the lobby. Grant, I'm sorry. The investors, I know. I still want to see the west corridor lighting. He glanced at Sadie, then at the clock. Another night. Audrey seemed surprised. Grant usually made room. Tonight, he didn't. On the sidewalk, he opened an umbrella over Sadie as cold rain tapped against the fabric. They had gone half a block when she slipped her hand into his. Dad, yeah. Sadie looked up at him. Does Miss Callahan only like you when you're working? Grant stopped walking. Cars hissed through the wet intersection beside them. He wanted to tell her she had misunderstood. He wanted to explain Audrey's job, the investors, the pressure, all the reasons he had been explaining for months. Instead, Grant looked back at the glowing hotel behind them. For once, he couldn't think of an answer that didn't sound like another excuse. 3 days after the hotel preview, Grant stood at his kitchen counter packing Sadie's lunch when he noticed a bright orange flyer sticking out of her backpack. Lantern Walk, he read aloud. Sadie looked up from her cereal. Saturday. We make lanterns first, then everybody walks around the park when it gets dark. Grant smiled. Sounds dangerous. 9-year-olds carrying fire through Portland. They're LED candles, Dad. Civilization survives another year. She rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. The flyer stayed on the counter after Grant dropped Sadie at school. By noon, he had photographed it twice and deleted 2 different messages to Audrey. Inviting her shouldn't have felt complicated. That was exactly the problem. For 8 months, nearly every moment between them had come with an escape hatch. Dinner happened because a meeting ran late. Coffee happened because they were reviewing samples. Long conversations happened beside construction drawings, never across a table where either of them had to admit they had chosen to be there. Grant finally typed, Sadie's school is doing a lantern walk Saturday at Laurelhurst Park. We're going around 6. If you'd like to come, we'd be glad to see you. No work talk required. He stared at the message. Then he sent it. Across town, Audrey Callahan read it between meetings. Her thumb hovered over the screen. She could picture Grant making some dry joke about the weather. She could picture Sadie correcting him about something with complete confidence. Worse, she could picture herself enjoying it. There would be no investors there. No floor plans. No reason to call the evening professional. Audrey locked her phone. She would answer later. Later became dinner. Dinner became Friday morning. By Saturday afternoon, the message still had no reply. Grant checked once while helping Sadie pull a mustard yellow sweater over her head. Then he put his phone face down. "You invited her, didn't you?" Sadie asked. Grant paused. "How do you know that? You keep looking at your phone like it owes you money." He laughed despite himself. "Yeah, I invited her. Is she coming?" "I don't think so." Sadie studied him for a second, then reached for her green raincoat. "Okay." That simple answer landed harder than disappointment would have. At Laurelhurst Park, damp leaves covered the paths in copper and red. Children carried paper lanterns glowing blue, orange, and gold beneath a cloudy Portland sky. Grant and Sadie made theirs crooked because Grant attached one side upside down. Sadie declared it artistically uneven. For the first time all day, Grant forgot about his phone. They walked beneath dripping trees, drank hot cider, and stopped to help another parent repair a torn lantern. Grant realized something uncomfortable. He was having a good night. Not a good night considering Audrey hadn't come. Just a good night. His phone buzzed near 7:30. "Audrey, I'm sorry. Today got away from me. Is the lantern thing still happening?" Grant looked toward Sadie. She was laughing with two classmates, her glowing lantern swinging beside her knee. Normally, he would have answered immediately. "Yes, come." Or he would have offered another evening, another opening, another way for Audrey not to feel that she had missed anything. His fingers rested over the screen. Then he slipped the phone back into his coat pocket. He wasn't punishing her. That distinction mattered. Grant had spent months making sure Audrey never had to experience the consequences of hesitating. Every time she stepped back, he quietly kept the door open. Maybe that hadn't been patience. Maybe he had simply made waiting too easy. 20 minutes later, he replied, "We're heading home soon. Hope your day went okay. Nothing else." Across Portland, Audrey read the message twice. There was no anger in it. No accusation. No second invitation. For reasons she couldn't explain, that bothered her more than if Grant had been upset. At the park, Sadie slipped her small hand into her father's as they walked toward the car. "Good night," Grant asked. The lantern was crooked. "That's not what I asked." She grinned. "Yeah, good night." Grant looked back once at the trail of warm lights moving through the wet trees. Then he followed his daughter toward the parking lot without checking his phone again. By the following week, Audrey noticed Grant had stopped bringing coffee. It shouldn't have mattered. The Tuesday project meeting was about final lighting adjustments, not coffee, and Grant arrived exactly on time carrying drawings under one arm. His dark wool jacket was damp from the Portland rain. He greeted the project manager, the architect, and Audrey with the same polite nod. Morning. No private smile. No paper cup beside her laptop. Audrey told herself she preferred it this way. The meeting ended 45 minutes later. Everyone began packing up. Usually Grant lingered. Sometimes they talked about the project. Sometimes they didn't. This time he closed his folder. "Grant," Audrey said, "do you have a minute?" He checked his watch. A minute. The words were harmless, but the boundary inside them wasn't. Audrey walked with him toward the hotel's west corridor. "The lantern walk," she said. "I really was going to come." Grant glanced at her. "Okay. I had an operations issue. I figured something came up." His calmness irritated her more than anger would. You could have told me you were upset." "I wasn't upset. You've barely spoken to me all week." Grant stopped beside one of the brass wall fixtures he had spent months selecting. "I've spoken to you every time we've needed to talk about work." Audrey folded her arms. "That's exactly what I mean." For a moment, neither spoke. Rain tapped softly against the windows at the end of the corridor. Grant had imagined this conversation more than once. In every version, he explained himself carefully enough that Audrey finally understood. Standing there now, he realized that was another form of waiting. "Sadie asked me something after the preview," he said. "She asked if you only liked me when I was working." Audrey's expression changed. "Grant, I told myself she didn't understand." "She doesn't. She's 9. She's 9, not blind." Audrey looked away. Grant continued, quieter now. "I've spent months making this easy. If you're close, I'm there. If you pull away, I give you space. If you don't answer, I assume you're busy. And then when you come back, I act like nothing happened. I never asked you to do that." "No, you didn't." That answer caught her off guard. Grant wasn't accusing her. He was taking responsibility for his own part. "When this project ends," he said, "I need to stop treating whatever this is like it's eventually going to become something just because I've been patient enough." Audrey's face tightened. We never agreed this was a relationship. There it was. Grant felt the words land, but they didn't hurt the way he expected. Maybe because they finally gave him something clear. He nodded once. You're right. Audrey seemed almost unsettled by his agreement. Grant adjusted the folder beneath his arm. That's why I'm going to stop treating it like one. He started toward the elevator. Grant. He turned. Audrey looked as if she wanted to say something, but the confidence she carried into boardrooms had disappeared. Nothing came. Grant waited only a few seconds. Then he pressed the elevator button. That evening, he picked Sadie up from after-school care and drove home through wet streets shining beneath red traffic lights. Miss Callahan text you? Sadie asked from the back seat. Grant smiled faintly. Nope. Are you going to text her? He watched the windshield wipers sweep the rain away. Nope. Sadie nodded as if this were perfectly reasonable and returned to her book. For Grant, it wasn't that simple. He still cared about Audrey. That hadn't disappeared because he finally drew a line. But for the first time in 8 months, he wasn't asking himself what Audrey might eventually choose. He was beginning to ask what he would. 2 weeks later, Audrey saw Grant laughing with another woman. She almost kept walking. A business dinner had ended early, and Audrey was standing beneath the awning of a restaurant in southeast Portland, waiting for her rideshare while cold November rain swept across the street. She pulled her camel wool coat tighter around herself and glanced toward the storefront opposite her. Warm light spilled from a ceramic studio. Grant was inside. He wore jeans, a gray sweater with the sleeves pushed up, and an expression Audrey hadn't seen on him in weeks. Relaxed. Sadie sat beside him at a pottery wheel, concentrating fiercely on a crooked bowl. Then the woman beside Grant leaned over and smeared a streak of clay across the back of his hand. Grant stared at it. She laughed. He dipped 2 fingers into a lump of wet clay and lifted them toward her in warning. The woman raised both hands. Don't you dare. Audrey couldn't hear the words through the glass, but she could read the moment. Grant laughed and reached for a towel instead. The woman took it from him, still smiling, and wiped clay from her wrist. Sadie looked between them and burst out laughing. Something tightened unexpectedly in Audrey's chest. She didn't know the woman. She didn't know why Grant was there. And she had absolutely no right to ask. That was the part she hated most. A car passed between Audrey and the studio, throwing rainwater against the curb. When it cleared, Grant was helping Sadie lift her misshapen bowl from the wheel while the woman stood close beside him. They looked comfortable. Not glamorous. Not dramatic. Just comfortable. Like people who had stopped wondering whether they were allowed to enjoy being together. Audrey remembered Grant in the hotel corridor. That's why I'm going to stop treating it like one. At the time, she had heard frustration. Now she understood there had also been a decision. Her phone buzzed. The rideshare had arrived. Audrey didn't move. Across the street, Grant said something that made the woman laugh again. For 8 months, Audrey had assumed Grant would remain somewhere near the edge of her life while she figured out what she wanted. She had never consciously decided that. She had simply behaved as though his patience had no expiration date. Now, watching him through rain-streaked glass, she felt the possibility she had avoided naming. Grant could choose someone else. Worse, he could simply choose a life in which Audrey no longer mattered. Sadie suddenly turned toward the window. Audrey stepped back beneath the awning before the girl could notice her. Her driver tapped the horn. She got into the car without looking across the street again. But as Portland's wet storefront slid past the window, Audrey carried one image with her. Grant smiling beside another woman. And for the first time, his distance didn't feel temporary. Audrey lasted 4 days before asking who the woman was. She hated herself a little for counting. The opportunity came Thursday morning during the final Northline project review. Grant stood at the end of the conference table presenting the last energy use numbers while rain blurred the Portland skyline behind him. He wore a navy sweater over a white button-down, his sleeves pushed slightly above his wrists. He looked rested. Audrey noticed that too. When the meeting ended, Grant gathered his papers. Everything should be ready for final sign-off Monday, he said. Grant, can I ask you something? He looked at her. Audrey immediately regretted starting. Sure. She could have asked about the West Corridor sensors. Instead, she said, were you at a pottery studio last weekend? Grant's expression changed from professional concentration to confusion. Yeah, I happened to see you. Okay. The silence became unbearable. With someone. Grant stared at her for a second. Then understanding appeared on his face. Leah? Audrey hated how quickly he said the name. I don't know. Tall, brown hair, probably covered in clay? That sounds like her. Grant nodded. Leah Bennett. Audrey waited. Grant didn't continue. She finally asked, "Are you seeing her?" The question surprised both of them. Grant set his folder on the table. "Why?" Audrey folded her arms. "I'm just asking." "No, you're not." Her jaw tightened. Grant wasn't cruel about it. That somehow made it worse. "You haven't wanted to talk about us for months," he said. "Now you're asking about another woman. I didn't say this was about us." "Then it shouldn't matter who Leah is." Audrey looked toward the window. He was right, and she hated that most of all. Grant picked up his folder again. "She's Sadie's aunt." Audrey turned back. "Her aunt. My wife's younger sister." The words rearranged the entire scene Audrey had watched through the studio window. Grant continued quietly. "Sadie's mom died 6 years ago. Leah moved back to Oregon last year. She's trying to make up for a lot of time she missed with Sadie." Audrey felt embarrassment rise into her face. "I didn't know. You never asked." There was no accusation in his voice. Just fact. Grant headed toward the door. Audrey should have let him leave. "Instead," she said, "I thought she was someone you were dating." He stopped. "I figured. And that doesn't bother you?" "What part?" "That I thought that." Grant considered the question. "I'm not sure what you want me to say." Audrey took a breath. "When I saw you with her, I felt—" She stopped. Grant waited. For months, Audrey had been able to discuss multi-million-dollar acquisitions without searching for words. Now she couldn't finish one sentence. "Jealous?" Grant offered. Audrey looked at him sharply. He didn't smile. "Yes." The words sounded smaller than she expected. Grant leaned against the conference table. "Why?" Audrey opened her mouth. Nothing came. The obvious answer was that she had misunderstood what she saw. Except that explanation no longer worked. Leah wasn't dating Grant. The threat wasn't real. And yet the feeling hadn't disappeared. If anything, it had become clearer. Audrey slowly sat down. Grant watched her without rescuing her from the silence. "That was new too." "I don't know," she finally said. Grant nodded. "Maybe you should figure that out." He wasn't angry. He wasn't asking her to choose him. He wasn't offering another easy doorway back into whatever they had been. He simply left. Audrey remained alone in the conference room. For several minutes, she watched rain slide down the windows. Her phone buzzed twice with messages from her executive team. She ignored them. The woman across the street had never been the problem. That realization should have relieved her. Instead, it frightened her. Because Audrey could no longer blame jealousy on a rival. She had seen Grant laughing with someone else and felt the sudden terror of being replaced. But what she feared losing wasn't attention. It wasn't convenience. It wasn't even the comfort of knowing Grant would always be available. She missed the man who remembered she hated mirrored elevators. She missed the quiet conversations after meetings. She missed Sadie correcting her with that serious little face. And beneath all of it was a truth Audrey had spent 8 months carefully refusing to name. She wanted Grant in her life. Not professionally, not occasionally, not only when it was safe. Audrey closed her eyes. For months, she had believed avoiding a decision protected everyone from getting hurt. Now she understood the flaw in that logic. Not choosing was still a choice. And Grant had finally stopped waiting for her to make it. Audrey did not call Grant that night. For once, she understood that realizing something did not automatically give her the right to act on it. Instead, she went home to a quiet condo overlooking the river, took off her damp coat, and sat at her kitchen counter with a cup of tea she forgot to drink. Grant's words stayed with her. "Maybe you should figure that out." By midnight, Audrey had stopped trying to make her feelings sound reasonable. She had liked Grant almost from the beginning. That wasn't the difficult part. The difficult part was admitting what she had done with that feeling. Every time Grant came closer, Audrey had found a respectable reason to step away. He was working for Northline. She was his client's CEO. He had a daughter. He had already lost a wife. She had responsibilities. The timing was complicated. None of those things were imaginary. But Audrey had used legitimate concerns to avoid an illegitimate arrangement of her own making. Keeping Grant emotionally close while refusing to tell him whether that closeness had a future. The next morning, she almost texted him. She deleted the message. An apology sent because she was frightened of losing him would still make the moment about what she wanted. So Audrey did something harder. Nothing. At Northline, she stopped finding reasons to attend meetings Grant's project manager could handle. When his final invoice reached the company, she left the approval process to procurement rather than touching it herself. Grant had earned his work. He did not need a favor disguised as affection. A week passed. Then, on a cold Saturday afternoon, Audrey walked into a community arts workshop near Sadie's school. She had learned about the event from a public neighborhood calendar, not from Grant. Children crowded long tables covered with colored paper, glue sticks, wire, and battery-powered lights. Grant stood near the back, helping Sadie attach a handle to a paper lantern. He saw Audrey before Sadie did. His expression became cautious. "Audrey." "Hi." Sadie turned around. "Ms. Callahan." "Hey, Sadie." Audrey kept her hands in the pockets of her dark green wool coat. She had deliberately brought nothing. No gift. No flowers. No excuse. "Can I talk to your dad for a minute?" Sadie looked at Grant. He nodded. "Stay where I can see you." They moved several feet away. Audrey didn't waste time. "I owe you an apology." Grant said nothing. "I kept telling myself I was being careful," she continued. "But I wasn't being fair. I wanted you close when it felt comfortable, and when things started feeling real, I backed away." Grant's face remained calm, but he was listening. "I made you carry all the uncertainty," Audrey said. "Then I saw you with Leah, and suddenly I cared about losing something I had refused to name." She swallowed. "That wasn't fair to you." Grant glanced toward Sadie, who was now arguing with another child about whether purple and orange belonged on the same lantern. "No," he said. "It wasn't." Audrey nodded. She had expected the truth to hurt. Oddly, it felt cleaner than reassurance. "I am sorry." Grant studied her for a long moment. "I believe you." Relief moved through her too quickly. Then Grant added, "But I need you to understand something." Audrey waited. "I can forgive you without going back to the way things were." Her relief disappeared. Grant's voice stayed gentle. "Forgiving you and waiting for you are two different things." Audrey looked down at the wet pavement visible through the open workshop doors. A month earlier, she might have explained herself again. She might have told him she was changing. She might have asked what she could do to fix everything immediately. This time, she didn't. "Okay," she said. Grant seemed almost surprised. Audrey managed a small smile. "I didn't come here to ask you for anything." Across the room, Sadie's lantern suddenly collapsed. "Dad." Grant turned. Audrey stepped back. "Go." He hurried toward his daughter. Audrey watched him help Sadie rebuild the crushed paper frame, patient but unwilling to do the work for her. For the first time, Audrey understood that perhaps the same rule applied to her. Grant could forgive her, but he could not rebuild what she had broken for her. That part belonged to Audrey. For the next 3 weeks, Audrey kept her distance. Not the old kind of distance, the kind that invited Grant to chase her across it. This time she respected the boundary he had drawn. Grant noticed. There were no late-night messages disguised as project questions. No convenient appearances at meetings she didn't need to attend. When Northline officially closed the hotel project, Audrey sent the same professional congratulations to Grant's firm that she sent to the architect and contractor. Grant expected to feel relieved. Instead, he found himself wondering whether he had mistaken Audrey's apology for another temporary burst of emotion. One Friday evening in early December, he and Sadie were decorating their Christmas tree when the doorbell rang. "Pizza?" Sadie asked. "Pizza doesn't ring the bell anymore. It sends 12 notifications and makes you watch a tiny car move across a map." Sadie laughed. Grant opened the door. Leah stood outside wearing a burgundy knit hat and carrying 2 grocery bags. "Emergency supplies." She lifted one bag. "Cookies." The other. "More cookies." Sadie cheered from the living room. An hour later, Christmas music played quietly while Leah helped Sadie untangle a string of lights Grant had nearly thrown away twice. "You seem weird," Leah said. Grant looked at her. "That's specific." "You know what I mean." Unfortunately, he did. Leah had known him before his wife died. Through the years afterward, and through every awkward attempt he had made to convince people he was doing fine. Grant lowered his voice. Audrey apologized. "The CEO?" "Yes." "The one who kept treating your feelings like a calendar invitation she could reschedule?" Grant frowned. "That description is unnecessarily accurate." Leah smiled. "What happened?" Grant told her. "Not everything." "Enough." When he finished, Leah handed him a glass ornament. "So what's the problem?" "I don't know if I trust it." "Her." "Maybe myself." Leah's expression softened. Grant looked toward Sadie, who was standing on a chair despite being told not to. After his wife died, Grant had built his life around predictability. School pickups, grocery lists, client schedules. Saturday pancakes. He told himself it was stability for Sadie. Some of it was. Some of it was fear. Audrey's uncertainty had frustrated him because it threatened the controlled life he had built. Yet his response had been another kind of control. Either she could offer certainty, or he would shut the door completely. Leah seemed to read his face. You don't have to marry the woman tomorrow, she said. Helpful. You also don't have to punish her forever because she scared you. I'm not punishing her. Then don't punish yourself either. Grant looked at the ornament in his hand. The following Tuesday, he saw Audrey unexpectedly at a neighborhood coffee shop. She was sitting alone near the window in a cream sweater, reading something on her tablet, while winter rain darkened the sidewalk outside. She noticed him. For 1 second, surprise crossed her face. Then she simply smiled. Hi, Grant. Hi. No pressure. No apology. No attempt to turn coincidence into destiny. Grant ordered his coffee. He could have left. Instead, he walked back toward her table. Audrey looked up. Mind if I sit? Her expression changed, but she didn't rush to fill the moment with meaning. Sure. Grant sat across from her. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Audrey glanced at his cup. Black coffee. Always. I thought you put cream in it. That was yours. Audrey blinked. Then she laughed. Grant did too. It was small. Almost nothing. But this time, neither of them pretended it was something else. And neither demanded that it become more before it was ready. The Seattle offer arrived on a Wednesday morning. Grant read the email twice before calling the restaurant owner who had contacted him through an architect he'd worked with years earlier. The project was a waterfront restaurant renovation, small enough to feel personal, ambitious enough to challenge him, and completely independent of Northline. The catch was travel. For roughly 3 months, Grant would need to spend 2 or 3 days a week in Seattle during installation. That evening, he told Sadie over spaghetti. So we'd move? She asked. No, we'd stay here. I'd travel. Sadie twisted noodles around her fork. Would Leah stay with me? Sometimes. Mrs. Alvarez next door could help too. Sadie considered this with the seriousness of someone reviewing a corporate merger. Can I come to Seattle sometimes? Absolutely. Then I vote yes. Grant smiled. I'll notify the board. 2 days later, he met Audrey for coffee again. This time it wasn't accidental. Grant had asked. December rain tapped against the cafe windows while Audrey sat across from him in a charcoal wool coat over a soft blue sweater. I accepted a project in Seattle, Grant said. Audrey's hand stopped around her coffee cup. Oh, it's 3 months. Mostly travel. Sadie and I aren't moving. The relief that crossed Audrey's face was brief, but Grant saw it. Then she caught herself. Congratulations. Thank you. Is it a good project? I think so. Audrey nodded, but something had shifted between them. Grant could almost see the old instinct working inside her, the desire to protect herself before the situation became uncertain again. Instead, Audrey took a slow breath. There's something I need to tell you. Grant waited. I've been trying not to say it because I didn't want my apology to become another way of asking you for something. Her voice was steady, though her fingers tightened around the cup, but not saying it would be another version of what I did before. Grant didn't move. Audrey looked directly at him. I love you. The cafe noise seemed to fall away. Grant's expression softened, but he didn't reach for her. Audrey continued. I think I've loved you for longer than I've been willing to admit. And that scared me. Why? Because loving you isn't only about you. Grant's eyes narrowed slightly. Audrey glanced toward the window. You have Sadie. You had a life before me. You lost someone you loved. If I stepped into that life, I couldn't control whether I would be good at it or whether it would last. Grant was quiet. So I kept telling myself I was protecting everyone, Audrey said. Really, I was protecting myself. Grant looked down at his coffee. I cared about you too, he said. A lot. Audrey heard the past tense. He continued, maybe part of me still does. But I can't be the person you choose only when losing me becomes real. I know. I mean it, Audrey. So do I. Grant leaned back. If Seattle had been 6 months instead of 3, would you ask me not to go? A month earlier, Audrey knew what she might have done. She might have found a Portland contract, called someone, created a reason for Grant to stay close enough that she didn't have to feel the consequence of uncertainty. Now she understood that would only repeat everything she claimed to regret. No, she said. Grant studied her. Audrey's eyes were bright, but she didn't look away. I won't ask you to stay. I won't offer you work. I won't pretend Sadie needs me. And I won't turn what I just said into something you owe me an answer to. Grant said nothing. If I mean what I'm saying, Audrey continued, your choice has to remain yours. The words hurt to say. That was how she knew they mattered. Grant looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Thank you. It wasn't the answer Audrey wanted, but she accepted it. They finished their coffee and walked outside beneath a gray Portland sky. At the corner, Grant opened his umbrella. Audrey opened hers. They stood a few feet apart. I leave Monday, Grant said. Then have a safe trip. I will. Audrey wanted to step closer. She didn't. Grant turned toward the parking garage. Audrey walked the opposite direction. Neither looked back. For the first time, Audrey had told Grant exactly how she felt without trying to control what happened next. She might still lose him, but love, she was finally learning, wasn't proven by preventing someone from leaving. Sometimes it was proven by leaving the door unlocked and letting them decide whether they ever wanted to come back. Grant came home from Seattle on a Friday evening in March. The project had taken 11 weeks instead of 12. He had driven through rain, missed school night dinners, learned more about waterfront ventilation than any sane person needed to know, and discovered something he had not expected. Distance had not erased Audrey. It had simply removed the pressure surrounding her. During those 11 weeks, she never asked when he was coming back. She never manufactured a reason to see him. Once, she texted to wish Sadie luck before her school science presentation. Another time, she sent Grant a simple message after hearing the restaurant project had passed inspection. Congratulations. You earned this one. Nothing more. Grant had stared at that message longer than he cared to admit. On Saturday morning, Sadie dragged him to the same neighborhood coffee shop where he and Audrey had last sat together. Hot chocolate, Sadie announced. You had hot chocolate yesterday. That was Friday hot chocolate. Grant sighed. Obviously a separate category. They stepped inside. Audrey was near the counter. She wore a cream sweater beneath a navy winter coat, her hair loosely tied back. When she saw Grant, surprise softened her face. You're back. I'm back. Sadie looked between them. Then, she pointed toward an empty table. I'll be over there making mature decisions about whipped cream. Grant watched her leave. Audrey smiled. She's getting subtle. It's terrifying. For a moment, neither knew what came next. Then Grant said, walk with me. Outside, the morning was cold but dry. They followed the sidewalk toward a small park while bare branches moved above them. I thought about what you said before I left, Grant began. Audrey kept walking beside him. I also thought about why I was so angry. She looked at him. You hurt me, he said. But I realized I was asking you for something I wasn't giving either. What? Risk. Grant stopped near a bench. After my wife died, I built everything around keeping Sadie safe. Then somewhere along the way, safe became the same thing as controlled. Audrey said nothing. I wanted certainty from you because uncertainty scared me too. That doesn't excuse what I did. No, it doesn't. He smiled faintly. But this isn't about keeping score. Audrey looked down, then back at him. What is it about? Grant took a breath. Trying again. Her expression changed. Not triumph. Not relief alone. Something quieter. Slowly she asked. Very. With no guarantees? None. Audrey nodded. I can do that. Grant raised an eyebrow. She corrected herself. I can learn to do that. He laughed. When they returned to the coffee shop, Sadie had somehow acquired both hot chocolate and a blueberry muffin. She looked at Grant, then Audrey, then their hands. At some point during the walk, Grant had taken Audrey's. Sadie smiled, but, mercifully, said nothing. There was no dramatic announcement that morning. Audrey did not offer Grant a position at Northline. Grant did not suddenly become wealthy. Nobody's life was transformed by a check, a promotion, or a powerful connection. What changed was smaller and harder. Two people stopped letting fear make every decision for them. And maybe that is worth remembering. Money can change the rooms people enter, the clothes they wear, and the choices available to them. It cannot determine the value of the person standing in front of us. A wealthy executive deserves human respect, but so does a single father balancing work and school pickups. So does the woman serving coffee, the man repairing a hotel system, and the child watching adults decide what kind of people they want to become. Being poor does not make someone lesser. Being rich does not make someone greater. Dignity is not something people should have to earn before others agree to see it. Audrey had once allowed status, responsibility, and fear to shape how close she let herself become to Grant. Grant, in turn, had learned that protecting himself could become another kind of wall. Their second chance worked only because neither rescued the other. They chose honesty. They chose respect. And they chose to meet as equals. Outside, winter was beginning to loosen its grip on Portland. Sadie walked ahead of them carrying her hot chocolate. Grant and Audrey followed. Not toward a perfect future, just toward one they were finally willing to build without pretending they already knew how it would end.